summer annuals, their beauty is unmatched. But what if I told you that they're not just necessarily for the summertime? If you're lucky enough to have your annuals survive through the heat that a lot of us have been experiencing, you absolutely can extend their life through the fall. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I've been pretty successful with some of my annuals, and I'm going to tell you about the steps that I take each year to have these beautiful blooms last throughout the fall season. Stick around, can't wait to show you. Summer annuals, man, I'm telling you, I look forward to these beautiful plants every single year. And in fact, I plant so many annuals more than perennials because I just love the power that they bring in the yard and the nonstop color that really does enhance our garden space. Plus, the reason why I plant so many annuals is because I really do like to change things up from year to year. I love my perennials that come back without fail, but I just love my annuals. And if I can find a way to extend their life through the fall, man, it is an absolute win. I'm not lucky enough to have all of my annuals survive. There are some losses around the garden, but the ones that look like this can absolutely be successful throughout the fall. So I just take a few simple steps in order to ensure the lasting flower power of these annuals throughout the fall. And here recently I trimmed back this hanging basket because it was super leggy. I mean, it looked absolutely terrible. It was yellowing. There were very few blooms. It also had some aphids, so I just took it back up to the top of the container. And this is probably about 4 or 5 weeks later, and look at how absolutely beautiful we have all of these gorgeous annuals doing a really magnificent job in here. I have this super Tunia Mini Vista Indigo and this sparkling amethyst verbena, and along with this double super bells there, all of them looking really beautiful, and I'm really happy with this. And I thought this was going to be a loss, but eventually it did come back, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So what I'm going to focus on is the steps that I took with this one a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to go through them right now. Really, it's a couple things that you need to worry about. The first one is pruning. So I've talked about that numerous times on my channel, and I have this really pretty super bells here. This is the Holy Moly version of Calibrachoa from Proven Winners, and it did really beautiful. It looks fantastic still, it's blooming, but I am getting a little bit of yellowing on those leaves in the backside here. It's just a little bit leggy, which means that this annual is putting a lot of energy into growing these branches further, and we really don't necessarily need that to be happening right now because we want to focus on root growth and then eventually bloom production in the fall season. So I'm just going to take this annual and demonstrate what I'm talking about. Now, Proven Winners does recommend trimming it up to about 1/3, but I like to take it a little bit more than that. So all of these yellowing branches right here, I'm just going to snip them off, and it's totally fine to trim off blooms. I'm going to shape this into kind of like a round, like half dome spherical shape, and it's going to be a lot different when I'm done with it, and it's just going to stimulate that growth. Like right now, this plant is very healthy, but all of this extra growth right here is absolutely unnecessary. So trim those off there and kind of take it up. I could probably take it up all the way to the top of the container, but I'm going to give it just a little bit more extra branching here than doing it super severe. Okay, if you can tell right there, I've done that. I have a little bit of yellowing here. I'm just going to trim that off. I may even trim off all of the blooms, and it might look like I have a really nice evergreen shrub by the time I'm done with this. So let's trim up the rest of it. So as you can tell, I just kind of trimmed around the side into what looks like a shrub-esque look. And the reason why I kind of trimmed it up this way is because we want to initiate that growth from the center. So you're not allowing it to grow from the sides and out, making it even more leggy than it originally started. You want to encourage that growth from the middle. And I think this turned out beautifully. It's not really scientific, but if you just kind of remember that it's okay, first of all, to cut off your blooms. And second of all, it's okay to bring it up relatively close to the rim of the pot. I could have trimmed this up even more severely, but I don't want to do that necessarily right now because we just have a couple of months left in our growing season, and I want to make sure that this has plenty of opportunity to provide blooms in the fall like we want to. I'm going to take a couple more of my plants, trim them back so you can see what that looks like, because a lot of them really do need a cutback right about now. And then we'll talk about the next step that you need to take in order to provide those blooms into the fall, and it's relatively easy. Let's get some other things trimmed up now. So now this Super Bells is in a very different place than the last two that I just had up here and I was trimming back. And that's the whole thing. You kind of have to recognize where your plants are. If they look completely evergreen like this and they have blooms throughout, kind of judge where you want to take that trim, because even though this is still looking beautiful, it can benefit from just a little bit of a trim along the bottom, really stimulating that growth and enhancing the look of the plant overall, especially when we want to continue this bloom cycle throughout the fall season. I would not take this plant all the way up to the top like the other ones. The other ones were looking really, really tired, and they've been hit a little bit harder from the heat that we've recently had. This one has endured the heat beautifully, and it's full of bloom. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a trim along the bottom to really kind of stimulate that growth. And I mean, it's going to be very, very small, only about 2 inches or so. And really, that's just about it. It's going to stimulate growth from the center and from the sides. And when these blooms open up, it's going to look absolutely beautiful. If anything, it's allowing the plant to take some of that energy and put into the bloom production rather than continue the growth down past the bottom, which I'm really not concerned with. I have this sitting on my white table in the backyard, and so I don't necessarily want it to drape on the table and out. That's the last one I'm going to trim up. Now let's talk about the second step that is important for fall blooms. All right, so let's bring back the first annual that I had trimmed back, and it looks so nice. I'm really happy with the way this turned out, but we want to make sure that we fuel the final flush of blooms with some great nutrients in terms of potassium and phosphorus. Helps promote strong root development, which will really aid these plants in heading into that cooler weather. It also can aid in energy transfer, which is really important as the plant stores energy to really promote those blooms in the fall. And finally, potassium. Potassium, we know, is really important to our own bodies for heart health and things like that. It really does strengthen core elements of our cell system, and it also does the same for plants, really strengthening the cells of the plants in the foliage and in the roots, which are essential for them to resist disease that can take hold in the fall. And it really does make a huge difference in the overall health of the plant as we head into those cooler temperatures, where we might have a lot of fluctuation in the weather from day to day or week to week. So if we give them these two essential nutrients, then we really can promote healthy growth and beautiful blooms that'll sustain it through the season like we want it to. So I'm just going to add a couple of little capfuls of those elements into the soil at the base of the plant. I'm going to lift this up and put them in here, but let's talk about the fertilizers that I have and which ones I'll be using. So the Espoma products are one of my favorites. I use them a lot in the garden. If you've been following me for a long time, you know that I use this constantly, especially Plant Tone, which is a great fertilizer for basically everything. It's kind of like a catch-all. You can't go wrong with this. And I especially love it because they're slow release and they really do help the plant succeed over long periods of time, which is what we need, especially in our containers. But I'm not going to use the Espoma Plant Tone today because the phosphorus and the potassium numbers are a little bit lower in this one. What is just slightly higher, and I think will be more effective, is Flower Tone, which has a higher rating of phosphorus and also potassium, and I think it's going to be perfect. So I'm going to take just a little bit of this Flower Tone. I'm going to use this, I use this for my slow release fertilizer to measure, and it's about a tablespoon. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of this per one of these containers. They're relatively small, and I think that's just going to be the right amount. So I'm going to get a little bit of that, and I'm going to lift up this side. I'm going to sprinkle in on this side right here, and I'm going to get another one and do the same thing on the other side. Couldn't be simpler than that. Perfect. So my containers that are on drip, I'm going to monitor that. If it still continues to be hot like it is today, man, I'm telling you, I am sweating. It is so hot today. I can't wait for that fall weather. Man, it couldn't come soon enough. But anyways, I'm going to monitor it. And as long as it's hot like this, I'm going to let it continue to water every day. If we start to get cooler, I'm going to reduce my water so they don't get saturated and end up getting too waterlogged. We don't want that because then they could die. So monitor your water, make sure you give them their nutrients after you've given them a trim, and they are going to be absolutely beautiful. So now I'm going to fertilize the other plants that I trimmed back today. But while I do that, I'm going to show you a glimpse of some of the plants that I've trimmed back here recently and how they look today, so you can see the benefits of doing what we're doing and how you can really enhance the beauty of your garden over time. Take a look. Beautiful, right? It's amazing to see how these things can really benefit from a trim back. The last final thing, as I take this container, this is one of my self-watering containers, and trim these beautiful Supertunia Bordeaux back, that we want to talk about is kind of recognizing which plants are best to really sustain us through the fall. And these Supertunias and the Superbells, which are Calibrachoa, that I'm trimming back, are really made for cooler temperatures. They do really, really well. They will handle a light frost, and so it's not even a problem. They can probably survive like a lot of our other tender annuals can't. And so I'm really taking my time and spending my energy on these plants that I know for sure are going to make it through the season, because, you know, it's nice to give everything a trim back, but really we want to focus on the ones that we know are going to be successful, and these are absolutely going to be just that. So I know it seems kind of crazy to be trimming back blooms, but I'm telling you guys, it's only going to benefit. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know that that's absolutely the case. So, and like I said before, you know, our summer heat are at various points of the year can really be intense. And if your annuals have not survived, then it's just an opportunity as we head into the fall to clear out our containers and start fresh with some new annuals that will definitely handle that fall cool weather. So a couple more snips and that's basically it. And as you can tell right now, it's already starting to push growth in the center, which is going to be absolutely perfect. We're kind of telling the plant where we want it to really spend its energy. And in a couple of weeks, it's going to look like we had just planted this in the ground in the spring, and it's going to be full of blooms. So I'm curious, what plants have you had the best luck with having them sustain their blooms through the fall? And are you planning on wiping out your plants and starting off fresh? Or are you going to continue allowing the plants to grow and see if you can get some more life out of them into the fall season? I'd really like to know. Until next time, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today on this hot day, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye.